On September 29, 2013, we flew to Athens, Greece to start our tour of the Black Sea. Our group stopped for a look at the Corinth Canal. It was 80 meters deep and the water depth was 35 meters. We were on our way for a 2-night stay at the Candias Castle Hotel. It is a seaside resort in the village of Naplion on the shore of the Aegean Sea. The next morning, we took an optional tour to the ancient Corinth archaeological site. From the bus, we saw a castle on the top of the hill. In ancient times, Corinth was among the richest of the city-states, and this is evident by the remains including the large marketplace and Apollo's temple, dated to the 6th century BC. We saw the center of the excavation as houses were on top of the rest of the area. 10,000 to 12,000 people lived here around the 6th century BC. 7 standing monolithic columns were each made of one piece of limestone. It was the Temple of Apollo. Originally, there were 6 columns at each end and 15 along each side. This building was the water supply. The area on the left was the religious area, and on the right were the commercial shops. These remains were of the Perrine fountain with 6 chambers that supplied water. This was the remains of a noble house with the marble statue of a family member in the alcove. The tall, narrow cypress trees are planted at cemeteries. We were on our way to lunch at a local restaurant. Our coach took us to Mycenae, the remains of the Mycenaean ancient city. In the 2nd millennium BC, Mycenae was one of the major cities of Greek civilization, a military stronghold which dominated much of southern Greece. The Lion's Gate is the biggest relief in the world. Originally, it had wooden doors. The Lion's Path leads to the palace.
So they would leave all these objects at the sides of the dead because they believed in life after death. That was the whole idea, for them to use these objects in their second life. They would cover their faces with gold masks, so the one who would escort their soul to the underworld wouldn't see the dreadful experience.
The round burial site was the royal cemetery.
They would make frescoes like they would make in Egypt, which means painting on a wet surface. That's why the colors lasted and were preserved ever since the 12th century before Christ.
This tomb was from the 12th century BC. Their souls left through the opening above the door. The size of this one stone was impressive. This tomb was large in diameter and very high. We were on our way to walk around at the seaside town of Napolino. This amazing castle was on a small island in the middle of the lake. The local side streets had interesting houses. The white church was in the town square. There were lots of dates on these trees. The next morning, we visited Epidaurus, a World Heritage Site. Our local guide took us to the best preserved ancient amphitheater, where the audience would be 12,600 people. It was a healing place for the body and soul. The theater, built in the 4th century BC, is a limestone structure in the shape of a shell for good sound. The first row of seats were for the VIPs, as they had backrests. The upper level was added later. Wally managed to grab this shot of a fish farm. Arriving in Athens in the afternoon, our group of 90 boarded the Prizendam, our beautiful floating resort, for the next 12 nights.
get you up there where the air is rarefied. We'll
Musical adventure through the popular music of 19 countries was played. The next morning, we left our ship in Volos, the sixth largest city in Greece, and drove to Mount Pelion. The museum, built in 1909, housed old artifacts. The oven had wood burning in the bottom and food cooking on top. The wall map shows the old city. This urn, with paintings of naked men, contained olive oil. The grave markers were originally painted. These are 3 graves from 3 millennium BC with their belongings around them. This plaque shows a person shaking hands, saying goodbye. One of the first cremations from the 4th century BC is shown with a dividing area between the ashes and a jug. Makronitsa is one of the smallest villages clinging to the mountains at an elevation of 2,400 feet. It is called the Balcony of the Pelion region. The traditional houses were built with 3 stories at the front and only 1 at the back, giving the impression that they are stacked on top of each other. We enjoyed exploring the narrow cobblestone streets that all lead to the main square. 4,000 people live here. The square had a very old tree with a hole in it and a fountain where the locals got their water. The 17th century houses had grey slate roofs.